Hello, I want to talk about a particular issue that we sometimes have struggles with, and that's trying to clean up these wall intersections where we have multiple walls coming into a single point and those walls not necessarily showing cleanly. So we can see here we have this double stud wall. We have a single stud wall with multiple finishes, another single stud wall, multiple finishes. Again, some of these corners are cleaning up nicely. This wall has two finishes on each side. So this is why we have four separate walls instead of this one running through, because this wall and this wall, while in line, are distinctly different. Now it seems like these should clean up nicely because their reference lines are all coming together perfectly. But obviously this is not the preferred appearance for this. We should be seeing the core run through. Obviously the furring should be showing stopping here with no air gap in this wall. So the first thing I want to do is take some hot spots, because these walls could be repositioned. Reference lines can be thrown off. So I'm just going to put some hot spots so that I get these alignments all properly back into place after we're done here. So looking at this wall in particular, we want the reference line to actually be proud of this edge so that we can avoid things like this little bit, as well as the overall issue of this piece. So putting that reference line to the core, let's take a look here. We have reference line here at the inside face. Obviously that reference line is not on the inside face. Which seems kind of problematic to begin with. And then beyond that, we have an issue of that reference line not able to set to the core. So we're at 7 5/8 inch from the inside face, and there's no reference to the core at all. So that seems problematic in and of itself. So let's take a look at what's going on with this building material. If we go right click here, and we'll just say edit composite building material, and we can see this piece right here is not defined as a core. If we look through the various layers of this composite, nothing is defined as a core. So the first thing to do is to say this piece is a core. The next thing is where this piece is running through, it should be cleaning up here better. But if we look at what this piece is, it's set to core, so it's matching the other building materials. We have, looks like some redundant building materials that should be purged here, but we have core furred. And you look here, that has, the core has a 700 building material priority, the core furred has a 649, so it's slightly less. We should be using something like that to designate this as non-core critical building material. We can define this as a core, and then our airspace also shows up as a core. Again, that airspace, if we look at what that is, that's a 0 building material priority, so it shouldn't be running through no matter what. So now we've defined the core as both of these studs and the airspace that shows between them. Now that those pieces have a core, we can see this starts to kind of clean up a little bit better, but there's still this weird angle coming through where they're all trying to heal together. So while the reference lines need to be touching each other, right, we don't want some reference line floating way out here. If they all come to the same point like this, they don't always clean up the way you would expect. Now this thickness and this thickness are the same, so these should be cleaning up nicely, just like this thickness and this thickness are the same. So there's always kind of this like give and take and experimenting with what these walls are and what they're doing. So here in the wall settings, I'm just going to say that this is, I'm going to take a guess on which one is outside. So we'll say core outside, and we'll set this to 0. And you can see that's exactly why I put these hotspots in here. So now I'll bring this back over. Now this starts to clean up a little bit nicer. You know, these finishes are coming through where I wouldn't expect them to. I kind of want those finishes to clean up to each other. But let's take a look at where these walls are coming together now, right? So that seems a little bit more appropriate. We can kind of play around with how these join together a little bit. Maybe pulling this through, joining it that way. Obviously I'm making a mess of it there. So let's take a step back again. And there's always a bit of experimentation, give and take, in terms of how these come together. So maybe rather than having this one join before this one, let's take a look at the junction order here. So that's 8. Maybe let's bump it up to 9 and see what that does for us. It doesn't look like that helps us at all. Drop this one down a little bit. So maybe it's a building material issue. Let's take a look at that. Let's join all of these back together at the same. Let's put them to 7. So we can see here that that's creating, again, some other additional issues where these building materials are running through and joining before this one. So this one needs to join after the other two. And that's getting us very close to correct. It's just this issue right here. And that could be a matter of like shifting this reference line over as well. So if we take a look at this wall, instead of saying core center, let's say core outside, core inside. And shift that back over to line up there. And then we get a nice clean junction. So just keep in mind that that reference line doesn't always need to be at the center of the core. Sometimes aligning it to the center of the face is going to give us that clean intersection where it needs to be. Making sure that the building material intersections are set up properly. If we turn on our true line weight, it's okay to see this line running through because technically this furring is an extra piece. Obviously we want to see it as clean as possible with as few junctions in between these building materials as possible. But again, also knowing that these are correct designations, correct assignments, is really what's paramount to getting these to all tie together properly.